Hi, it is noon on Wednesday, so it is Writing Wednesday. I'm Janet Fitch. I'm a novelist, and I am here to answer your questions about writing. Um, I have some ideas today. I have some questions that people have sent through the week, and my own reading always gives me ideas, and I hope it does for you too. Um, Announcements. There's still um, the early bird discount for my Art of the Sentence class at communityofwriters.org. Um, I think the discount lasts until the end of the month. Um, so you can grab that and save yourself some money. The class will be January 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. It's a weekend intensive on writing the sentence, and that's what I was going to talk about. That's what I'm talking about today, so you can get a little preview of how my mind works and my some tips on sentence writing. We all write sentences, but not every sentence is an interesting one. Um, so we're going to take a look at a really good writer today and take apart his sentences and see how that works. Um, a little sample of what we'll be doing in the class in a more structured way. Uh, what else is going on? If you're interested in comedy writing, if you're interested in especially this week animation, writing. My husband just wrote a book called Comedy Writer, and he did two videos, free videos, picking animation writing, which is what he's doing a lot of right now. Um, the do's and don'ts and how it really works in the physical world, not just what can cartoon characters do, but exactly it's kind of a technical field, and if you want to know about that, go to andrewnicholswrites.com. The videos should be up, and if not, they're on YouTube. Andrew Nichols with two L's. And look for his animation talks. The first one is usually the don't, and the second one is the do, so I like to switch the order. Um, so check that out. So I thought we would talk today first. If you have any questions, hi Linda, hi Jeffrey. If you have questions, pop them in there, and I'm happy to take them. And then we will get into some writing issues in the art of the sentence, which is what I'll be teaching. But first, I'm going to ask answer a couple of really quick questions that were sent to me this week, and if you have any, plug them in there. Can you write something so deep it would make me feel happy? Yes. Yes, and that's what I always try to do. If anybody's read my books, I hope you will notice that that's what I'm always trying to do. How many talents and abilities can you give a protagonist before she becomes the dreaded Mary Sue? So I guess Mary Sue is some shorthand for anybody familiar with that term. Throw it up there in comments. But I assume it's like, too good to be true. Yeah, too good to be true. Who wants a protagonist who's too good to be true? You always give people flaws. Give them their flaws. Somebody who's a really successful attorney, probably has some difficulty with their children, or an alcohol problem, or a cancer scare, or a really demanding marital problem, or something like that. So nobody gets to be, hi Peggy, nobody gets to be, too good, because who's going to identify with somebody who's too good? Everybody has problems. And the mightier the person, the deeper the flaw should be. to really move us. I mean, that's what tragedy is for. It can also be comedic. Um, but yeah, if somebody's a really successful person, their problems have to be really interesting. Hey, Ruthie. Hi, Miranda. So yes, do give your characters flaws. It's one of the things that I really, really hated. Anybody who knows me knows this. I really hated about Ian McEwan's Saturday. I mean, it was like the father was like the best surgeon in London, super prestigious, and the mother was a super prestigious attorney and super successful, and even the loser's son was actually the best guitarist ever, and the daughter was like best whatever at all time, and even the grandmother was a channel swimmer, a champion. It's like, God, can't there just be a normal person in this family? Or where's the drug addict? Where's I'll hang out in her room. It just like, it was awful. It was like one Mary Sue after another. You just wanted to kill them all. And no blow ever landed, and nobody got a big boo-boo. It was like a fakest thing. So watch your successful characters. Especially a protagonist, and give them their set of lumps and bumps and scars and, anything that looks really good. Nobody has perfection. And to oneself, unless you're a super narcissist, you don't see yourself that way. You see the difficulties that, nobody walks around going like, I'm the best thing, since sliced bread. I mean, nobody is like that, really. When they are like that, then they're sitting on a big pile of shit. Those people are really interesting. So Jeffrey has a question right now. How should a writer handle killing off in the middle of a book? Well, killing off who? Killing off your protagonist? You can't. They're your point of view character. I wouldn't kill your protagonist off. A killing of another character in the middle of the book? Why not? I'd rather see somebody die, something real happening, than just a bunch of bullshit like Saturday. Linda says, except Trump. I mean, Trump is like I wouldn't make him a protagonist, but you could. And that's sitting on a pile of shit. Just can't see it. He can't see his own. But he probably, I mean, that kind of a mindset comes from somewhere. It's very interesting. If it wasn't so perilous in the real world, it very interesting character to write about somebody like that. I've always wanted to see the Michael Cohen story. Ugh, what an interesting character. How do you select their critical flaws? That's an interesting question. It's instinctive. I feel it. If you have if I created a very successful, say, doctor, I would think like, what happens to doctors? Their hours are extreme. They're often away from home. The residency is brutal. So if I picked a resident, it would probably be something that happens at the job, something that makes it even harder for them. At the job, they're trying to keep a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but they just don't have any time. Interactions with patients, maybe they're very shy and they can't deal with the interaction. They thought they wanted to be a doctor. Maybe they were better suited to being research person, but there they are dealing with patients, and the shock of that would bring up a shy person's problems and put pressure on them, and maybe they learn to be more human. Or a very judgmental person, that's an interesting place for them to be. Doctors who are their odd hours, is adultery seems to be sometimes part of that. Also drug addiction. An anesthesiologist. I mean, that person is surrounded with drugs, and long hours and difficult stuff. And it's so easy, just one for you and one for me. Here's somebody commented, doctors are often drug addicts. Exactly what I was saying. Not often, but, the temptation is very much there. Or if there's an addict in the family, or, then how do you deal with that? There's a lot of flaws. Overly indulgent parent, discover they're a doctor and they discover that their kid is an addict, and what happens with that. So you think of who the character is, what their situation is, and what would put pressure on them. And that's where you find their flaws. Your virtues are your vices, and vice versa. Confidence is also blindness. A super confident person is very confident of themselves and sometimes can be terribly wrong, or blind to what's going on around them. So that's a good source of flaws. Then here's another question, quick one. Will new forms of fiction be established? Do you think new things will arrive, like the short story and flash fiction? Absolutely. Notice we went from short story to flash fiction. Our times are very fast-paced and demanding, and flash fiction has emerged as a form. It used to be called prose poetry, is about all you would ever see in that short form. The short story is very recent and wouldn't have been, in earlier times, would not have been considered enough. It just would have been considered like, what is this? It's like, an olive on a plate. That's not a story. Whereas in our pressed times, it's delightful to see that little thing. So the form reflects the time. And, that's a fun thing to do, is sit and, in an afternoon, think about different forms of short, of fiction that you could invent. You don't have to do that. Just think about, there's letters, there's emails now, there's, there's a fractured narrative, there's, multiple genres kind of mixed together. You see a little bit of a screenplay or a play. Joyce did that back in the day, but it could be. It's just a fun thing to sit and invent. People who like to invent things, if you're somebody who likes to invent or make gadgets, toys that you put together, you might just enjoy figuring out a new genre. So I don't see that as any problem. So I want to talk about, I am rereading The Hours, which is such a good book. And I'm looking at, because I'm getting my class together, I'm thinking very much about how people put sentences together, how they tell their stories. And one of the things I'll be talking at length in the class, but I wanted to do it because this is just such an obvious example, that people need to think in terms of variety when you're writing. Always you think of variety. You're thinking of not using the same word over and over and over, but think about different ways of saying things, which doesn't mean to stick in words that don't really belong there just because you like the way they sound. I mean, you have to be comfortable with your tools and really know what things mean and have them be accurate and appropriate. But, if you find yourself using the same words, and you can search, you can find words, show me all the wases, show me all the likes or the want or something, it's like, wow, I overuse that word. I need to find better words. And sometimes it's each sentence you find the better word that goes in that sentence, not just randomly sticking in synonyms for want, but what word actually fits there better than want. Oh, here's a question. Could one write a novel without naming, identifying the protagonist? Yes. Do you need that identity to hang something off? No. Read, there's a Jeanette Winterson novel about an affair with a married woman, and the protagonist is not identified. And it's a brilliant book, very well done. It's a mystery, and it's a little bit of an irritation, which keeps the reader fascinated. It's a puzzle, it's a mystery, and you keep trying to find that, solve that, and they're not letting you solve it. So this is a kind of a writer, Jeanette Winterson, who had been kind of on the experimental side of things, the avant-garde side of things, of storytelling. And was it Sexing the Chair? Oh, Written on the Body is the name of the novel, with the unspecified protagonist. And that is a brilliant book. But whenever you put up obstacles to your reader, you have to know what you're doing is you're creating a little bit more challenging text. So Written on the Body, it's called. You're looking at a little bit more challenging kind of fiction, and literary fiction is more challenging. So you have to understand that people will love it more. The people who love it will love it more, but it's not going to be for everybody. And that's always the interaction, is my teacher used to say, write for the 5 smartest people you know. Well, I'm going to write for the 5 smartest people I know, but I'm always going to be aware of what the average reader can absorb, because I am somebody who likes to write for both, an exacting reader and a popular reader. So I do go back and make sure that even if I'm doing something that's a little challenging, that it's going to be interesting and people will be willing to make that challenge. But you're going to sometimes lose the popcorn reader who just wants to, read a good thriller or something. So not everything is for everybody. But Jeanette Winterson, this not naming the protagonist works like crazy in that book, especially because we don't even know her gender, his gender, her gender, its gender. We don't know. Very interesting. So that's Jonathan's question. And then Janet wants to know, would this best be done in a second draft using the various words? Yeah, definitely buy the second draft. I write, and then the next day I go back to the day before and clean it up and move forward. So I would do it on that second day. I'd go back and maybe challenge some of the wording. But I do that each draft. I will be cleaning up, challenging the language. And the last draft will be all language, probably. But I do that. I don't do that like right when I'm writing it. I just, hand-to-hand combat. I don't have time to straighten its hair. I'm like, trying not to get killed. So I do it on the second pass, which might be the next day, or 3 days later. I might go back 5 pages and clean it up. Just that's how I get back into the work every day, is I go back and read what I've written and keep going. And then that keeps the tone consistent. Let's see. So Linda is reading a novel called You Again, which I think is a fabulous book by Deborah Jo Immergut. That is just beautiful, and each sentence is beautiful, and it's packed with information, and the language itself is beautiful. And so that's what, talking about the art of the sentence, that's a beautiful book. So I thought I would take a look at The Hours by Michael Cunningham, and I don't know how to look at the pages while I'm reading with my phone propped up. So I'm just going to read aloud and draw your attention to what he's doing. Now, there's two kinds of writers, basically. There's long sentence writer, the short sentence writer. So the short sentence writers usually come out of journalism. The long sentence writers usually come out of poetry. Just a rule of thumb that is based on nothing at all. So, take it with a grain of salt. Now I think of American literature as the long sentence, the short sentence people. So the short sentence people come out of, I'd say, Stein. Hemingway is our short sentence guy. Very clear, lucid, short sentences. And then you have a long sentence person is more like the Faulknerian. They're beautiful long sentences, Joyce Carol Oates, and then that's obviously Michael Cunningham comes out of that. But notice how he handles the length of sentence, and we're going to work with this in my class because I think people do not take it seriously enough to have the variety of sentence length and structure, and this is just length. If the reader sees that you can control that length, they trust you, and it develops a music, which is what, as a writer, I'm always looking for the music. I'm always looking for the writers who make music on the page, not just even a short sentence guy like Hemingway. I mean, there is music. There's music in Cormac McCarthy. It's a certain kind of music, but it's there. It's not just newspaper language. No, they do it a lot with rhythm and sentence length, but it's very tight. They don't err, but they lean towards the very short sentence. But if you write short sentences, throw a long one in there just for the music to relieve the monotony. If they write if you tend to write a long sentence like Cunningham does, make sure that there are enough short sentences that they punctuate it. So here's Cunningham. This is the beginning of The Hours, just called Prologue. She hurries from the house wearing a coat too heavy for the weather. So it's about a line. Next sentence. It is 1941, period. 3 words. The next one, another war has begun. So 4 words. She has left a note for Leonard and another for Vanessa. So 1 line. So we've gone a line and a bit, 3 words, 4 words, a line. Then she walks purposely toward the river, certain of what she'll do, but even now she is distracted by the sight of the downs, the church, and a scattering of sheep, incandescent, tinged with a faint hint of sulfur, grazing under a darkening sky. So it's full of dependent clauses, all those commas, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4 lines long. So after the 4-line sentence, then we go, she pauses, watching the sheep in the sky, then walks on. 1 line. So we go from 1 line, 3 words, 4 words, 1 line, 4 lines. A 4-line sentence is a long one. Then just 1 line. Then the voices murmur behind her. Bombers drone in the sky, though she looks for the planes and can't see them. So a 2-line sentence. Then she walks past one of the farm workers. Paren, is his name John? Question mark, close paren. So same sentence. She walks past one of the farm workers. Is his name John? A robust, small-headed man wearing a potato-colored vest, cleaning the ditch that runs through the osier bed. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. He looks up at her, nods, looks down again into the brown water. 1 line. As she passes him on her way to the river, she thinks of how successful he is, how fortunate to be cleaning a ditch in an osier bed. So that is a two lines. She herself has failed 4 words. She is not a writer at all, really. She is merely a gifted eccentric. 1 line. Patches of sky shine in puddles left over from last night's rain. 1 line. Her shoes sink slightly into the soft earth. Maybe 2/3 of a line. She has failed, and now the voices are back, muttering indistinctly just beyond the range of her vision, behind her, here, no, turn, and they've gone somewhere else. So that's 2.5 lines. So we've gone short, then 1, maybe 2/3. There's 1 line there. 2 lines. 3 lines. Then the voices are back and the headache is approaching as surely as rain. The headache that will crush whatever it is she and replace her with itself. So 3 lines. The headache is approaching and it seems, is it she or not she, or is she not conjuring them herself, parenthetical, that the bombers have appeared again in the sky. So 2.5 lines. She reaches the embankment, climbs over and down again to the river. 1 line. There's a fisherman upriver, far away. He won't notice her, will he? 1 line. She begins searching for a stone. 1/2 a line. She works quickly but methodically, as if she were following a recipe that must be obeyed scrupulously if it's to succeed or not at all. If it's to succeed at all. 2 lines. She selects one roughly the size and shape of a pig's skull. 1 line. Even as she lifts it and forces it into one of the pockets of her coat, the fur collar tickles her neck. She can't help noticing the stone's cold chalkiness and its color, a milky brown with spots of green. So that's 3.5 lines, almost 4. She stands close to the edge. Now they'll start getting longer. She stands like being drawn to that river. She stands close to the edge of the river, which laps against the bank, filling the small irregularities in the mud with clear water that might be a different substance altogether from the yellow-brown dappled stuff, solid-looking as a road that extends so steadily from bank to bank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. So we're getting really, that's a long sentence, a 5-line sentence. She steps forward. 3 words. So she'll take this long lyrical line and he'll take this long lyrical line and then he punctuates it with a very short one. So he knows, so the reader knows that you're not going to be caught in this endless bramble of very long sentences, that there's going to be punctuation, that there's going to be some short ones in there to kind of pin you. She does not remove her shoes. 1/2 a line, another shorty, because you just read a 5-line sentence. It's like, oh my God, is it going to be another? Is it Henry James? You know? Oh no, thank God. 3 words, 4 words. The water is cold, but not unbearably so. Now we're getting longer again. The water is cold, but not unbearably so. 1 line. 2/3 of a line. She pauses, standing in cold water up to her knees. Another 2/3 of a line. She thinks of Leonard. 4 words. She thinks of his hands and his beard, the deep lines around his mouth. Period. Little over 1 line. Then She thinks of Vanessa and the children, of Vita and Ethel, so many. One line. They have all failed, haven't they? That's even shorter. Half a line. She is suddenly immensely sorry for them. Half a line. So now we're coming in these short lines. She imagines turning around, taking the stone out of her pocket, going back to the house. A line and a half. She could live on. She could perform the final kindness. Okay, it's getting tense. One line. Then, standing knee-deep in moving water, she decides against it. One line. The voices are here. The headache is coming. And if she restores herself to the care of Leonard and Vanessa, they won't let her go again, will they? So that's 2.5 lines. She decides to insist that they let her go. So it rolls out, because remember, we're by a river. It rolls out, and then it comes back and tightens up again. She decides to insist that they let her go. Now she's pulled back. Where are we? She wades awkwardly, the bottom is mucky, out until she's up to her waist. So we're getting a little bit longer there, line and a half. She glances upriver at the fisherman, who is wearing a red jacket and who does not see her. 2 lines. The yellow surface of the river, more yellow than brown, when seen this close, murkily reflects the sky. So we have 2 lines there. Here, then, is the last moment of true perception. A man in a red jacket, fishing in a red jacket in a cloudy sky, reflected on opaque water. 2 lines. Almost involuntarily, it feels involuntarily to her. She steps and stumbles forward, and the stone pulls her in. 2 lines. For a moment still, it seems like nothing. It seems like another failure, just chill water she can easily swim back out of, but then the current wraps itself around her and takes her with such sudden muscular force, it feels as if a strong man had risen from the bottom, grabbed her legs, and held them to his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5-liner. Then it feels personal. 3 words. So that pull, that long sentence is dropping into the river and being pulled away. So that is control. And then it feels personal, little punctuation there. So the ebb and flow of the long sentences and the short sentences really adds a tension to your writing, a clarity to your writing, and people will read it and go, yes, this person has control over their prose. We don't, it's like the final muscle. It's the final ascent to the peak is this sense of language, and not just this paying attention to the story, to the material that's being delivered, but almost to the breath and the ebb and flow of emotion and ebb and flow of the tension in a sentence, how to pull back and give it a short, like, anchor pin. You're climbing, the peak, and you put that piton in, those little short bursts, a little short sentence or 2, and then lengthening up, and then you're, teetering on that rope, and you're swaying back and forth, or you're getting sucked into the river, and then we punctuate it, we land somewhere. So when you're reading this week, I really urge you to read something good. I know we all like to read, but even a good thriller. I mean, a good writer is a good writer, even depending on genre. But watch for somebody who has real control over their writing, and they can be in any genre. But you'll notice the way they reel out the length of sentences, and then they'll clamp on with a short one. Next time, maybe I'll bring a Hemingway, or Didion, somebody from the short sentence crew, and notice where they will extend a sentence a little bit, and you'll fall, like to describe something and then pulls it back. It's like, okay, that's enough of that. You know, there's music in the short sentence as well. So I am happy if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about. The Hours, Cunningham is just an incredibly lyrical writer, and it just happens to be my favorite kind of writing. It's definitely on the poetic side of literature, as is Woolf, where he comes from. I would say Faulkner, but Woolf, and Woolf is pre-Faulkner. So Faulkner comes out of Joyce and Woolf and the modernists. Like, he's a high modernist. So watch your books and, read stuff that is worth reading and worth analyzing, worth pulling it apart. And I hope that some of you find it interesting to work with sentences in this way, or think about how literature is produced on the micro level as well as on the macro level of story and character and all that. And take advantage of the art of the sentence. This is exactly the kind of stuff that we do. It's the kind of stuff that I guess some teachers in English class tried to do, but when you're in high school, it's like, oh, for God's sake. It is not interesting until you're actually trying to produce literature yourself. Then it's like, oh, I should have paid more attention. So anyway, if we have a little bit more time, let's see what time it is. Yeah, we have a little bit more time. So anything you want to know or want me to talk about, I do have the time. For me, this is the joy of writing, is the joy of reading not only a fabulous book with an amazing plot, interesting characters, but I could read, that kind of writing where the attention is in the sentences. Attention is always in the sentences, actually. And that's why I was rejected for so many years, until I learned that the sentence makes a difference. It's the difference between being striving towards greatness and being satisfied with the story, but not connecting to language at all. Okay, well, listen, if there's no more questions, I wish you a happy holidays. They're coming up really soon. I hope you give a lot of books. I love giving books for the holidays because they always fit. And it's easy to order. You order online, you go pick them up, and you're not exposed to the virus. So it's a perfect gift for the whole family. Alrighty, well, thank you very much, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.